Hello and welcome. We're your hosts. My name is Pia Maffei, and I'm joined as always by Sharissa Bradley, also known as the Doctor of Food. And we're here, we call this episode Friday Morning Chats with Pia and Sharissa. And we go through a variety of topics. Today we're covering topic number 2, which is on the IamACleanEater.com website under the 10 Commandments. And commandment number 2 is go organic or at least non-GMO. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, what that means, and then what GMO means. I'm really always amazed how many people come in and they don't know what GMO means.
Well, and you can't really fight a battle that you don't know what it actually means, right? And then we get people who say like, oh, GMOs are totally fine because of X, Y, and Z, but if you don't really understand what they actually are,
exactly,
you can't fight the fight.
And so that's what we want to cover today. So if you're online, go to www.IamACleanEater.com and you'll see on there where it says the 10 Commandments for Clean Eating. We're covering commandment number 2, okay? So commandment number 1, if you haven't heard already, is let the ingredient list guide you. We go through extensive examples and what that means, and now we're talking about commandment number 2. And I first want to just lay it out. There's a concept out there is just industrial food, right? It's all the food that we buy in the supermarket. Yeah. It's all the food that we buy at the restaurants, okay? So it's whether you're going to pay $8 for a bowl of protein, veg, and starch at one restaurant. Yeah. You can go to another restaurant and pay $16 because there's a white tablecloth and somebody taking your order, but it's the same food.
Same level
It's the same level of
mass-produced
food called industrial
Feed the masses.
food. Feed the masses, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're talking more about when you go out to buy and you say, well, I can't get, for whatever reason, you can't get everything organic, minimum organic. Then we're saying, well, at least get non-GMO options. And one of the tips that we use is there's a list and a guide called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen.
Yep, absolutely.
So at least from that guide, it'll go through and say, well, like cauliflower is on the Clean 15. Yeah. What that means is if you buy cauliflower that's non-organic, it's not as heavily sprayed or heavily doctored in some way.
It's food that doesn't need to be sprayed because the bugs don't go for it as often. It just doesn't need as much as some of these other things. Like berries, things that grow on the ground, they're constantly being riddled with, or that's what they want us to believe, that they need to be sprayed more often. But then some things like cauliflower, I think mango's on the list, and a couple other things, those just don't need to be sprayed. They don't get as attacked. They don't really have this many bugs or diseases, so you can get a clean version that doesn't have the label.
Right. So at least start there at a minimum. Of course, we always recommend that we go at least industrial organic. That's where we always try to push everybody to go. But if you cannot do that, then at least you're going non-GMO.
Yes.
Or the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, right? So now we want to concentrate on this topic of what is GMO? What does it stand for? Okay. When they say non-GMO, what does that mean? And ultimately, how does this impact our bodies from a cellular level?
Yeah, good.
Okay, so let's start there, Sharissa. Define GMO.
Okay, so GMO just stands for genetically modified food, meaning something about the seed was modified. Okay, so if we have what the reason kind of we went into this in the first place is we were dealing with droughts and famines. So scientists wanted, farmers wanted to be able to grow a crop that needed less water, or maybe less space, or maybe less nitrogen, or maybe was resistant to a certain kind of bug, or was resistant to droughts. So that's when they started genetically modifying foods. We want to see what plant grows best in these circumstances. So what happened was they watched crops, the ones that went through droughts and famines, things like this, that survived. And then they took those seeds and they recreated the same thing. And now that seed is mass produced. So now farmers can grow, instead of mixing corn and soy every season, they can grow soy all year long, right? Instead of growing, using a ton of water to grow wheat, we can do it with far less water. So that's where genetically modified foods came in. Now, it got a little bit more complicated as time has gone on, and we've decided that we want perfect food. So now we really want that perfectly round, bright green apple. Well, the genes for that perfectly round, bright green apple exist in the seeds. So they took the seeds from those beautiful bright green apples and recreated that, and have this now processed so that we can have perfect looking foods, perfect tomato, a perfect apple. But they lost something in it, right? They lost some of the flavor, and we don't understand really the long-term effects of what these things are going to do to our body. And we won't know. We won't know probably for another 100 years. Oh, here we go. We're back.
We're still on.
Okay.
So is the next generation?
So we won't know what the long-term effects are until the next generation of people. So my children's children, what their defects or cancer rates or autism rates, things like that, then we can show the progression of what GMOs have done in our bodies.
Because this kind of started, was the first GMO in the 50s or 60s? I can't recall.
Right back in that time.
Just in that time frame, and it was wheat.
Right, and even before that, they had started this process, right? So we know about, just kind of in terms of the plant evolution, it's survival of the fittest. So what farmers were doing was they were taking the fittest, or the most successful crop, and using that crop over and over again. So that's when it started. So we can even track this timeline back a little bit further.
Okay.
But it didn't start to get industrialized, mass-produced food, really scientific until the 50s, 60s. So then there's that gray line there.
Okay. So now we understand what the definition of GMO is.
Yeah.
Right? Genetically modified organisms. So that's what's happening. Now the history is, prior to the 50s, 60s, but then really started in the 50s, 60s with wheat, and then in the 70s, 80s really started to gain steam, and then now it's so many things are GMO.
Now it's harder now to find seeds that are non-GMO than it is to find GMO anything.
Right.
I mean, it's so difficult.
So when an item is labeled organic, it means the organic label means non-GMO. So you don't have to worry if you're buying organic that somehow it's GMO.
Right.
Okay, so that wasn't true, I think 8 years ago or something like that, but that is true now. So that organic label is safer when it comes to that understanding of what is GMO. So many people, when I think about maybe 5 years ago, that GMO really had a lot of traction behind it. So everybody was like, oh, I'm just buying non-GMO, I'm just buying non-GMO.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean the crops weren't sprayed. Right? You still had a problem with regards to the farming practices. And so that also is something we want to talk about today. So again, commandment number 2 is at a minimum from the industrial food, choose non-GMO, preferably organic, right? And so when you're doing that, and you hit on an important part when you say, well, for another 100 years, we're really not going to know the impact of GMOs because we didn't. Let me just take a detour for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love the comment when people say, well, my grandmother lived till, 95 years old because she would eat, beans and wheat and, and had a swig of whiskey every night. Or
beautiful.
Whatever it is, right? Okay, whatever the grandma did, okay? So here's the point with the grandma, okay? Grandma did not live day one on GMO food. There was no GMO food when Grandma was a little girl, right? Because in the 30s, when Grandma was born, so you had 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Now Grandma's a mom, right? And now in her 30s, 40s. So Grandma that lived to 95 wasn't impacted and introduced to GMOs probably until her 50s, right? Or maybe even a little bit older.
Right.
So that's a little bit hard to say. So when grandma now, her kids and her grandkids, now that selection of food, when it's all industrialized and pretty much all GMO, now what is that impact on that child's life, right? And that's your point when you say, we don't know. We really won't know.
I mean, we're already starting to see it. So just by using that example, so we've got grandma. Grandma doesn't get introduced to it until maybe even after her childbearing years, right? So her daughter or her kids didn't necessarily feel the impact of it. But now the daughter now has industrialized food, has access to convenience food, has access to science food, is really what it is. It's science-based foods. Now, she's not necessarily going to see the impact. She might have, heart disease, diabetes, things like that later on in life, kind of in, 70s, 80s, those things. And that's where we get the idea that we're too young to be sick, right? I think this all the time, even for myself. I'm 31 years old, and I think I'm too young to feel tired like this. I'm too young to have this joint pain. That's where we get that idea from, because that generation, our parents' parents, didn't feel it until they were later, right? They didn't have the industrialized food until later. So they missed the childbearing years. Our parents didn't. So they had it during their childbearing years. They had convenience foods, and not in the way that we have now. They had Betty Crocker. They had canned soups, and it was the first time that moms and families started doing like casseroles and kind of like halfway meals where they would buy part of it and make part of it.
Hamburger helper type stuff, right?
And even when those things started, they weren't half as bad as they are now.
Exactly.
Correct. So no, we gotta look back. Go back just for fun, just as a fun thing, and do it for me as a favor. Post it below what you find. Google image 1960s, 1970s, 1980s hamburger helper, Stouffer's, whatever it is.
Heinz ketchup.
The ingredients list.
Yeah.
And then you do it, you post the old ones, and I'll find the new ones, and I'll comment back to you and show you what the new ones are. Just because I want to show the change, and then that we can kind of debunk some of these myths together. So you help me find the old ones, I'm going to find you the new ones, and I'm going to post it for you. Just for fun. And then you can see them down below.
Love it.
Okay, so now we've got the mom who's eating these things. She's got the convenience foods. Now the next generation, you don't ever see it until the next generation. My generation of people, I have already lost, I'm 31 years old, minimum 10 people who have been very close in my life to cancer. 10 people.
Wow. In your generation. You're only 31. Oh my gosh.
One of my best friends to suicide because of bipolar disorder. That's inflammation in the brain. Okay, so that's convenience foods affecting another generation, which is giving mental illness, leaky gut, leaky brain. Breast cancer a few months later to one of my best friend's sisters at 34 years old. So now we're starting to see it affecting my generation.
Yes.
Next, we'll see our kids. So like our little kids, and my very best friend from like all way back, her son was born with a softball-sized cancer in his liver. In his liver. Born with it. 3 months old, they found it was softball size. They life-flighted him, had to have surgery. This is now when we're going to start to see the effects of it. Okay? And it'll only get worse as we continue to pump the junk in. And it isn't for the reasons that you think it is. Now, this is where we get in a little bit complicated, and I'll break it down. So when I say that it's not going to be until the next generation, the reason I say that is because we all have a genetic makeup. We all have a code, right? We have all these genes. We get them from our mom and our dad, and our environment, how we live, determines what genes get expressed. This is called gene expression. We have genes in our body. If you have had someone in your family that has autoimmune disease, has had cancer, you probably have gene markers for the same things. Now, gene markers and having those abilities or having them in your body doesn't mean you'll ever see them. It means you could live your entire life perfectly healthy, die from old age, or just like take your last breath in your bed with your family all around. Like, these are how you're supposed to still live. The problem with GMOs, and again, we won't see the full brunt of this for probably another generation, probably our kids or our kids' kids.
Yes.
They're having what's called gene expression that they wouldn't normally have. So we have all these cancers in our body, we have all these autoimmune diseases now, we've broken down so far. Those GMOs, their only job is to turn on genes in the fruits and vegetables. So like the tomato, we want that perfect red. It's going to turn on the perfect red.
Okay.
The problem is it doesn't stop working when it's in the tomato. When we eat that tomato, it also happens to be turning on genes in our body. So we're getting gene expression from the foods that we never would have gotten. Doesn't it? I mean, goosebumps. It makes me so pissed off.
Ding, 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 ding,
right?
ding. Yeah. Oh,
It makes me so mad because we think like,
wow.
does it really freaking matter if your tomato is red or perfectly round, or does it, like, if it has a little blemish or a worm eating it? Like, these are the things that our parents, our grandparents, they grew up eating foods that didn't have any like contamination or anybody tinkering with it. And you can't tinker with one thing without expecting it to have a reaction, right? Everything we do in life has an equal reaction. So that's what's happening. We are changing the structure of our food, which is then changing the structure of our body. So we could live a perfectly healthy life, but instead we're putting science-based foods in our body all the time without even caring or thinking about it, putting it in our kids' body without ever caring or thinking about it, and then we get so mad. Like, why did I get cancer? Why did I get lung disease, heart disease, COPD? My kid has cancer, autism. Like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
To roll it back.
You gotta roll it back.
Yeah.
And it isn't your fault or the kid's fault or anybody. It's a culmination of, over time, the genes being mutated and the gene expression coming out where it never should have been.
So is a good thing to Google search, you search gene expression GMO? Would that
Absolutely.
That would probably be a good place to start kind of understand more about what is happening.
Yeah, and I'd be happy, if you're confused about any of this, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about it, and I can answer to the best of my ability. The best thing, if this is even remotely interesting to you, but incredibly confusing, which it is to most people.
Yeah. It's complicated.
It's complicated. The best thing that you can do, even if you don't understand it, is just don't eat it.
Right.
Don't buy it. Don't put it in your body. Even if you don't understand what it's doing that's wrong, just understand that it's doing something that it shouldn't be doing, so it doesn't belong in your body.
So on that level of saying, well, if you're eating non-GMO, at least it's better. It's like, okay, it was still sprayed.
Yeah.
But at least there was a seed. Usually these seeds are called heirloom seeds, right?
Right, because they're the original.
They're the original. So when you see something that says heirloom, generally that's going to be better.
Right.
And so it starts with that. It's in a crop. It's still kind of industrial farming, right?
Yeah, it's still going to be sprayed. And that, again, because they're trying for mass production. So if they get a bug on their crop, even though they often don't, they do it as a precaution.
Okay.
Because if you get a disease or a bug in your crop, it wastes all of it. They have to get rid of everything. They have to start over. So they do it as a precaution. Let's spray all this crap as many times as we can, because we know the other thing that GMOs are doing is they make the seed resistant to the spray. So this is kind of interesting, right? So there are seeds that are resistant to Roundup. So they can spray Roundup directly on the plant, and the seed will still grow. Roundup kills everything, right? You spray Roundup on your sidewalk to make sure that the grass doesn't come up through the cracks, and it makes sure it doesn't grow. Now the scary thing to see is someone spraying Roundup on strawberries and then not dying. Right, that's a little creepy. That's real creepy.
That's creepy.
So,
and that's also called glyphosate, right?
Right, so now you're still getting all of that in your body, even with the non-GMO. But we don't know necessarily if just the spray is going to be turning on genes, or if the spray is just causing heavy chemical buildup in your body, which can also cause a huge amount of problems.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I know, it's so sad. It's like once you go down this rabbit hole, you kind of have to just make these decisions for yourself. So doing things like the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, that'll save you a lot of money, but going to the farmers markets, coming to places like this beautiful Artisan's Palette in Temecula, California, going to the website IamACleanEater.com, shopping there, you could rest assured that you're getting things that aren't going to be harmful to you, your body, or your children.
Right.
Also, we have beautiful meal plans that show how you can feed yourself and your family on an organic or mostly organic diet on a very stringent budget. So we've done all of these things, given you all of these tools to make it less painful for you. But if you're having trouble with it still, reach out and let us help you, because this is overwhelming. And it was for me too when I first started learning about it. But it's so useful and it's
Yes.
so important.
So if you need some help with all of this, because you could see it could get complicated, Sharissa's a private coach, a health coach, and she can help you go a little bit deeper. So if you do suffer from an ailment, or do you want some help with regards to what can I cook? She's also an awesome cook, by the way.
Thank you.
She can help you develop these meal plans
Yes.
and design them specifically for where you're at on your current
Yes.
level of your journey.
Yes.
And then have you continue, but not just like a little puppet, oh, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make this. You're going to understand why you're doing it. She helps you get the little pieces of the puzzle and put them together to solve these problems. So Sharissa, can you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, please?
Yeah, so you can, if you're just interested in getting to talk to me, you can either comment down below or you can make an appointment directly with me. I have a free, your first session with me is free, so it's Calendly, like calendar, ly.com/Sharissa Bradley, and that'll take you right to my schedule, and you can just pop in your appointment time and I'll be calling you during that time. If that's
Just write it on the bottom in the comments.
Absolutely, I'll put a link in the comments.
Yeah, so then that way it'll just be easy that
Perfect.
somebody could just link directly to you.
Oh yeah, easy peasy.
Okay guys, that was our session today for Friday Morning Chats. Again, go online to www.iamacleaneater.com and follow along. We'll be posting this video there, and all our videos are on our YouTube channel, so please subscribe to it as well, and you can see more of this wonderful information that we give for free every Friday and sometimes Monday. It reminds me, Monday night we have
yes.
an awesome, oh my god, we're
Yes.
so excited.
Please tune
Monday
in.
night at around 6:30 in
Yeah.
that time frame, we're going to have Paul Grieve, co-owner of Primal Pastures, come and talk to us. And he was recently on an amazing show called $1 Billion Buyer on CNBC. So if you haven't seen that show, check it out because they're running the replays. And we're going to talk to him about that. We're so lucky to live in this little valley where we have all these gems
Oh my gosh.
around us. We
I know,
just
we can't
need
go
to
anywhere
find
else.
them. We just need to find them. So until next time, Monday, please join us. We'll see you then. See you.
Bye.